Automobile industry in India is headed towards an era of electric vehicles. In the past few years, the people have started accepting this change. The government has started coming up with relevant rules and regulations in order to make it happen. The central government has already implemented FAME 1 and FAME 2 scheme, and 12 out of 28 states have already come up with some kind of policies to promote EV. Also, industry has set up their EV divisions and started developing products. But all of this is not enough. The basic requirement to make it realize at large scale is that of skilled domain specific manpower, may it be for R&D, testing, prototyping, manufacturing, assembly lines, sales or servicing of vehicles. Now that is just the tip of the iceberg. But this does prove the point that there is a huge demand for the skilled labor and engineers.
Autobot India, being the pioneer in EV technology, learning and development, has come up with Autobot Academy, a dedicated platform for learning EV design, development, simulation and testing based on our PLA training approach.
Under the current circumstances of COVID-19, where the idea of social distancing and self-isolation is of utmost importance, we have come up with project-based live online courses where not only you will learn from our experts, but also do the project's assignments and take quizzes under the guidance of our experts, and also have your doubts clarified on the spot. Now all that in the comfort of your home. Now this course on electric vehicle design and development is made of several modules put together in order to give you a fine level of basic understanding of an electric vehicle technology with industrial applications. Let's take a tour at our modules of the course. Now Module 1, Basics of an EV. Now this will take you through the journey of time where you understand why almost after a century, EVs have made a comeback. What are the current scenarios and ongoing trends in EV? Finally, the basic components of an EV. Now in the second module, Powertrain Selection Techniques and Methodology, you will start with the understanding of the vehicle coordinates and move on further to understand the various forces acting during the acceleration. You will gain knowledge of basic aerodynamics of a vehicle and will be able to calculate the aerodynamic forces along with the rolling resistance and understand the basics of wheel selection. Now by the end of this module, you will also be able to calculate the force required at the wheel and the consecutive requirement of the motor by working on a real-life industrial case study. Now the third module, Traction Motor and Controller. You will start by understanding the types of motors being used in Automobile industry in India is headed towards an era of electric vehicles. In the past few years, the people have started accepting this change. The government has started coming up with relevant rules and regulations in order to make it happen. The central government has already implemented FAME 1 and FAME 2 scheme, and 12 out of 28 states have already come up with some kind of policies to promote EV. Also, industry has set up their EV divisions and started developing products. But all of this is not enough. The basic requirement to make it realize at large scale is that of skilled domain specific manpower, may it be for R&D, testing, prototyping, manufacturing, assembly lines, sales or servicing of vehicles. Now that is just the tip of the iceberg. But this does prove the point that there is a huge demand for the skilled labor and engineers.
Autobot India, being the pioneer in EV technology, learning and development, has come up with Autobot Academy, a dedicated platform for learning EV design, development, simulation and testing based on our PLA training approach.
Under the current circumstances of COVID-19, where the idea of social distancing and self-isolation is of utmost importance, we have come up with project-based live online courses where not only you will learn from our experts, but also do the project's assignments and take quizzes under the guidance of our experts and also have your doubts clarified on the spot. Now, all that in the comfort of your home. Now, this course on electric vehicle design and development is made of several modules put together in order to give you a fine level of basic understanding of an electric vehicle technology with industrial applications. Let's take a tour at our modules of the course. Now, Module 1, Basics of an EV. Now, this will take you through the journey of time where you understand why almost after a century, EVs have made a comeback. What are the current scenarios and ongoing trends in EV? Finally, the basic components of an EV. Now in the second module, powertrain selection techniques and methodology, you will start with the understanding of the vehicle coordinates and move on further to understand the various forces acting during the acceleration. You will gain knowledge of basic aerodynamics of a vehicle and will be able to calculate the aerodynamic forces along with the rolling resistance and understand the basics of wheel selection. Now by the end of this module, you will also be able to calculate the force required at the wheel and the consecutive requirement of the motor by working on a real-life industrial case study. Now the third module, traction motor and controller. You will start by understanding the types of motors being used in EV for different categories of applications like two-wheeler, three-wheeler and four-wheeler. The torque and speed, characteristics of the motor and various methodologies to control them and the control parameters. By the end of this module, you will be able to map the input parameters of the motor. Now in the final module on battery and BMS, you will be starting with the basic types of batteries and their chemistries being used in EV. Further on, you will be continuing with the basic calculation for the battery pack, which is followed by the basic understanding of BMS and its functioning in case of EV. In each module, you will be provided with various assignments, quizzes, in order to grade your knowledge and skill learned. By the end of the program, you will receive our industry recognized grade certificate on the basis of your performance. Now, as a conclusion, we believe that by the end of this course, you will be able to perform the most basic calculation in order to build an EV and have the basic understanding of the major components along with the upcoming developments and current trends and scenarios.
Sir, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Very welcome, sir, to this EV Career Talk Show we are organizing today, and we are really honored and really happy to have you as our guest speaker to discuss about the agenda of demand of new skills in this new normal. So first of all, I would like to thank you on behalf of Team Autobot India and Autobot Academy to find your the time and joining us today to share your expertise, your experiences for this program.
I'm very happy to be part of this, and especially given the fact that you've already launched an Autobot Academy, and we're very happy to partner with you on the various programs that you intend to launch, starting with the first program on the automotive, the system and design, essentially. Thank you.
So I think this course, what we have discussed about the electric vehicle design and development, it is like we've been running this course from last, I think, 2.5 years now. And for the same programs, we have trained around more than 1,000 candidates. And I think that course has become a course kind of entry-level program, which I think a lot of students, not only the students, but also the working professionals, which are from the non-EV background, they are also opting that program to build their basic fundamentals, which is more focused to the industry prospect and the domains. So we are really happy to collaborate and associate with the ASDC as our assessment and certification partner for this program. And with this, we look forward to actually transfer the benefit of this program at the the larger level, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's what we are looking forward to, because as you rightly said, because there is a lot of push on the electric vehicle policies, etc. I think there will be a need for a lot of manpower. We are looking and talking to a few of the state governments in terms of being able to use some of their resources and infrastructure to be
Right.
able to deliver programs, and I think that is something which we'll be looking forward to.
So I think today's talk more focus, which we are going to focus on the skills. Okay, so nowadays within this COVID time, where there's a completely a pandemic situation has happened, and we have globally, like we have seen a very different stage, and where a lot of things got transformed actually with this scenarios. So now, how, in your opinion, how do you see the change happened, especially with focus to automotive industry? So what we supposed to see before the COVID, the automotive industry, because parallelly when we see automotive industry, so in there we have three different technologies going parallelly. One is the our traditional BS4, which has existed more than a century in this market. Second, recently announced by the government of India, and to have the BS6 launch. And parallelly, then we, since 2013, I guess, where in India this electric mobility got incepted in India. So there are three different technologies going parallel in automotive domain. So how do you see as an industry leader being into that domain, engaged very actively, so into the change happening into the automotive industry?
Yeah, so as far as automotive is concerned, there is a lot of disruptions that are happening. You are right in saying that there are three distinct stages, but I would go and say that there are probably X number of events that are happening right now, and there are things which are changing on safety, things which are changing on emission, where you talked about the BS4 to BS6 transition, and changes in terms of the fuel on which the vehicle runs. So you have on one hand, the traditional internal combustion engines being run on petroleum products, and then you have electric vehicles, then you have hybrid electric vehicles, and then there are a lot of experiment that is happening on other alternate fuels as well. So overall, I think the industry is kind of looking at significant amount of change that is going to happen in the industry, and there will be a tremendous requirement in terms of the various skills that will be required, where people with that kind of a knowledge and a background will be required to be absorbed by the industry.
Right, sir. So, I just proceed with this, the questions like what we talk about the industrial change. So, in last one interview, what you have shared about, I was just going through on internet and found one article shared by you, which was on to again the forecast of the new jobs opportunities in the industry. Okay, so. This is my personal opinion, which I just wanted to share with you as well, just to ask your clarity. So, do you think that there is a saturation to our traditional automotive as we see the BS4 and BS6, and parallelly when we say the e-mobility as an emerging industry into the technology where the lot of space for the innovation, creativity, okay. So, what is your opinion that like our existing traditional industry at the verge of the saturation at this point?
I think the IC engines have been around for a very long time, and IC engines definitely talks about this is a very standardized kind of a technology that has been in use for quite a lot. And the emission norms are always a progression. So we've moved from BS2 to BS3 to BS4 and now to BS6. So obviously there is going to be a significant amount of focus on improving the emission norms and making it you know making it completely part of the global standards. And we are with BS6, we are actually at global standard because we're talking about an Euro 6 right now.
Correct. So, with the changes in automotive related to the electric mobility, so from the student point of view, there are a lot of queries. What we have seen, a lot of queries coming from the student. Okay, so they are into a very different situation. There are like a lot of panics, there's a lot of chaos between the students. Like what should happen next? Because the level of the layoffs has happened, right? So they are not able to decide, right, and they're not able to take the very clear decision about their career opportunities, how it is going to be into the EV industry. Right?
Yeah, so one should not look at it in a short term, because this is not about a transition from IC engine to electric vehicle engine, but it is also compounded by the fact that we are going through a COVID-19 kind of a situation. And therefore, the layoffs are not necessarily because of a change in technology, but there is a change in the various things in terms of what is happening in COVID related to the pandemic, the supply chain impact that it has, and all of that stuff, essentially. Now, if we look at electric vehicles in particular, they have been around for a long time, but it is just that we have now new technologies, new battery technologies, new battery material,
Right.
new electronics, new softwares, which is making it a much better solution than what it was in the past, as far as the the electric vehicles is concerned.
Right. Right. I just discussed one case study I was just going through. So when I talk about the e-mobility scenario, something similar happened in China a decade back. Okay, so they were at also at the very beginning stage when their five major cities, the pollution was completely the skyrocketing, and I think a decade back. So China government has decided a very strict policy to adopt. I think those 5 years cities to reduce the level of the emission, and they have opted a very systematic policy to deploy first the two-wheeler segment. Okay, and for them also it was a transition was very new for them, but what the interesting part, what I have seen in that model was the China government also focused a lot of things onto skilling the people. Okay, so their manpower at this point of view is somewhere around 1.5 million manpower being employed in this EV industry. So there was a very clear-cut policy to deploy and train the right skill set man people, and that resources actually helped China to adopt this technology at a very faster rate. And they have become a central hub for this technology. And now they one of the the world leader into the supply of the major components. Okay. So something we can see in India like this this e-mobility inception devised in 2030, almost is 7 years. So how do you see as the policies more focused to our the skill development?
Yeah, I think the policy addresses a lot of concerns. I think one of the very important change that has been brought in very recently is in terms of allowing for battery swapping, for instance, and allowing the vehicle to be sold and registered without the battery installed in it. And battery can be therefore looked at kind of a service and a recurring expense rather than an upfront expense for an owner of a vehicle. Now, this is very significant, especially from the perspective of the two-three-wheeler market, which is what the larger impact it will have in at least in the short term in terms of the EV adoption in the current market. So even if you look at the FAME 2, for instance, you will see that there is a significant thrust on two-wheelers in terms of the numbers and the money that is being supported. Of course, there is also a focus on the public transport in terms of the vehicle, the commercial vehicles, the buses that is there for the uh, adoption in the city urban transportation, for instance. Now, some of those adoptions will depend on how we are creating the infrastructure around charging, infrastructure around battery management systems, the servicing of that. How good are we using the entire telematic system that could be there in the buses? And therefore, there will be a lot of thrust and the need for skilled manpower. And the skilled manpower is required here is because here skilling in, let's say, servicing a vehicle or driving a vehicle will not just come just by observing someone or getting under the body of the car and stuff like that. Here you will have to learn to use diagnostic tools, diagnostic softwares, use of laptops, connecting it to the right ports, being able to analyze where the fault lies and being able to take out those parts, and also look at replace how to replace those parts and when to replace those parts, essentially. So these are things which would make it very interesting. At the same time, when you look at component manufacturing, etc., that you want to do for electric vehicles, you would also want to make sure that you understand the whole EV as a system rather than as individual components, which was probably more the case with IC engines. And therefore there will be a strong need for qualified manpower in that domain, where we are looking at the EV design and development knowledge part of it, and that is where a lot of initial thrust and manpower will be required as we go along.
True. So I think the recent the policy what being deployed for allowing the vehicles without the battery, I think that is a very good decision to be made, and that opens a very new avenues for the opportunity, and also what the upfront cost, like in the terms of the cost we see, there are two things are happening parallelly. One is the existing infrastructure, which is definitely required to adopt the electric vehicles at the mass level. Secondly, the battery cost, which is definitely we are not manufacturing in India. The completely we are sourcing from out of India. So almost 35 to 40% of the cost of one single component in the electric vehicle. But when we see other end as resources, so in last 5 years, the cost of the raw materials, the battery materials, got depleted very significantly, and we see the forecast now it's being coming from different resources. It is also forecasted to get decreased at a very significant rate. So somewhere around, if I just ignore the COVID effect, okay, so that was somewhere it was expected to have around 2024 or 5 to have a decent priced electric vehicles as compared to the IC. Okay, but in the same paradigm, I think it's a good step to bring this option that the vehicle can be sold without the battery. Okay, so that at least the upfront cost comes down, and the very basic difference, because when we buy IC vehicles, we don't pay for the fuel, right?
Hmm.
But in electric vehicles, we are actually paying for the energy which is already there. We are just marginally we are paying for the charging, right? So this I think when I'm going through the TCO, total cost of ownership perspective, and when we see a lot of cost get added, one is the purchase, then again the maintenance and the fuel cost. So definitely IC electric vehicles become in that long run cheaper than the IC, right? But I think this will help a lot, give new opportunities to the business units also, but also create a lot of job opportunities parallelly. Okay, and related to the charging infrastructure, which is one of the again a separate domain as compared to the electric mobility. So the lot of development is happening into this time by installing the charging, so the public charging stations, right? Like in our Delhi NCR, also a lot of projects are already undertaken. So how do you think, like, what are the different job categories we can expect from this charging and the battery swapping the models we have?
So, all of this, what will happen is that if you look at what we would want to look at inside the vehicle, in terms of, I think there will be a new breed of service technicians that will be immediately required for sure, because the vehicle will have a lot of electronics, a lot of softwares, etc., and those will have to be managed. Of course, the way the servicing used to get done in terms
Right.
of moving parts in internal combustion engine vehicles, and how it will get done for the electric vehicles will be quite different. And you will not find people coming into your service center very regularly, but there would probably be a lot of over the air, because these vehicles will, remember, also will be to some extent connected, and they will be able to send their diagnostics, etc., to a central server through which a certain amount of servicing will have to be done in terms of the software element of the vehicle, essentially.
True.
So that is service is definitely one domain. Second domain, I think, which is very critical and probably not many people keep talking about, is how you drive these vehicles.
Right.
Because driving an IC engine vehicle and driving an electric vehicle will need a certain amount of change in your temperament in terms of how you want to, these vehicles will be, say, it's like fairly comparably, these will have certain more amount of power, but how you kind of make use of it will determine how long your battery will last, how long will your charge last, and all of those kind of issues. Whether this will put significant amount of stress on the various control units, etc., is also what will get dependent on how you are trying to do the driving. And most importantly, wherever there is fast charging, slow charging, the different charging techniques which are there, as a driver also you will need to understand as to when and how to use these different kinds of charging to be available, especially when you are talking about a two-wheeler kind of a thing. You would not need to use a high the fast charging, the high voltage charging in general. You will
Right.
use a slow charging, the usual AC charging that you will do. Now, what if somebody puts in a fast charging on that? How does it impact the vehicle? So I think as a user, so when I say driver, I'm just basically saying that as a user, you need to have a certain amount of knowledge and cannot rely on your existing knowledge of driving IC engines. The next, I mean, these are very immediate.
Right.
Of course, a lot of opportunity is going to come in the manufacturing and the design development domain. Because if an engine gets developed in an IC engine era, that IC engine will kind of last you for at least 5 to 10 years. Earlier era, it used to last for almost 10 years. Now probably 4 to 5 years. But
Right.
if you are talking about, if you are talking about the vehicles which are driven by which are electric vehicle and which are being driven by batteries, the fact is that those will undergo changes because motors will constantly change, battery specifications will constantly change, and those will have to kind of be aligned with what you are trying to do. So there is a number of differences that one will need to look at while you're doing manufacturing. The other piece about manufacturing is, especially when you look at two-wheeler and three-wheeler manufacturing, you will find a lot of startups, etc., which are coming into this particular space. And they will definitely uh, be looking at how would they want to have a play in this market. And therefore, it will not be concentrated with only a few large manufacturers, but a significantly larger number of maybe smaller size manufacturers, and therefore a wider need of design, development, manufacturing
Right.
professionals that will be required. So I think these are all very real requirements and which are immediate requirements, and that is something which we must be doing. For this particular kind of a thing.
So I think you have rightly said, like the charging part, basically for the drivers who are going to drive the vehicle. It's a very different challenge set. It is not like earlier that you need not to just take the fuel to the vehicle, right? And you just get to go ready to go and drive the vehicle. Whenever some problem happened, you can visit to your nearest service station to get the things solved. But here something very different, whole the style, the ecosystem of the electric vehicles, where you need to know the complete the charging systems and its working behavior. Okay, while being a yeah. Also, being a driver, you need to know a lot of aspect of from the safety point of view. Okay,
Hmm.
of the electric vehicle. So I think when
Absolutely.
we talk about electric vehicle, we need a very different skill sets, a different skill set of the training to these drivers. Either they are going for the commercial vehicles, it's for the light commercial vehicles or the heavy commercial vehicles.
Right. So, I mean, see, these are very important things because you have a lot of high voltage system in
Right.
your vehicle, and you would want to make sure that the driver is aware of it and takes necessary safety precautions, etc. Now, and the same happens for your service technician kind of a profile also, that you can't touch a live vehicle, because you will have a very high voltage current going through the system essentially. So these are things which will be very critical while you are skilling the manpower, and the manpower needs to ensure and focus that they will be able to get these learnings while they are doing the skills training, because unless they do that, they are at high risk in terms of how they are driving the vehicle. I mean, you would have seen a lot of times while you're traveling through highways that a driver of a particular commercial truck is generally opening up the engine and trying his bait and luck in terms of doing the typical Indian mentality of a jugaad and stuff like that.
Right.
Now, if you try and do that with an electric vehicle, sometimes it could be very fatal without the knowledge of it, essentially. And God forbid, something like that starts happening, then the whole proposition of electric vehicles will go for a toss. And therefore, adequate safety measures are, as we call in manufacturing, idiot proofing, Pukayoki, or whatever you want to call it. Those kind of systems will also start coming into the play. But while they are getting implemented, I think it is very important for us to realize that we need to train people so that they are able to be conscious about these issues and know what to do and what not to do also.
Yeah, very true. I think these are the very serious things when we talk about electric vehicle is the safety. So any mistake, any unawareness about the system, it could cause to a very fatal loss to the person. And it is all about the human lives, which is quite precious. So we need to see like it should be well taken care of.
Yes, absolutely.
So is there any kind of a dedicated training program? Like I am aware of that what we discussed long back. There was a couple of the program being designed for this driver training. Being a part of that, our QP development, there was what we being saying. So these are the training programs available for the commercial vehicle.
So what we're doing is that, you may not necessarily have a driver who is label marked for electric vehicle or whatever. So what we are doing is we are right now in the process of revision of our qualification packs, and including the qualifications with in the driving domain. Now, even there, what we are doing is that for all our regular driving domain qualification packs, we are putting in an element of how to handle electric vehicles and what are some of the issues that you would want to do it. As far as the safety standards are concerned, we currently don't have any Indian standards for that, for essentially for electric vehicle. I'm sure as and when that gets developed, we will incorporate that as well. But currently, we are looking at the global standards that are available globally and looking at those components and seeing how we can incorporate those components without necessarily referring to international standards, etc., just so that the adequate coverage, the various levels of safety precautions that one needs to take can also be incorporated in our qualification packs.
Right. So coming back to again our the question, the topic, the agenda, we have the demand of the new skills in this new normal. So new normal has become a new definition for the post-COVID scenarios. So what we could see the transition into the new skill sets, because now we have the automation due to this COVID scenarios. I think a lot of manufacturing units have adopted the digitalization the process, like because still I think many of the manufacturing units or the production units facing the challenge of the manpower, because they have that they went to their hometowns and they're not available. And in the meantime, also that there is adoption of the digitalization to the process and also the automation. So in this process, we see there is a very big utilization of these two technologies happening to the automotive domain. So when we say the new skills, so are these also going to relate with the same thing with the automation and to the digitalization process into the assembly production of the manufacturing?
Yeah, I think digitalization will happen across all domains, and manufacturing cannot be different from that. So we're already talking about connected factories or smart manufacturing. Now, while some of these at scale will only be deployed in very large factories, for instance, in vehicle manufacturers, but a microcosm of that will also be visible in many of the component manufacturing units, and therefore we will see a lot more innovation coming coming in our way. Just before this, today in the afternoon, I was in another workshop with the HR heads of the component manufacturing units for the northern region plants. And I think what I heard in the various discussions throughout the duration was from a perspective of two things. One, we need to focus on skilling. There is no other way, because there is a constant change, and unless our manpower is skilled, we will not be able to become globally competitive, and wherever we are, we may not be able to retain our position. And number two, there is going to be a strong push towards automation, given the challenge of the numbers in the workforce, that people are not able to get it. And people are also realizing that skilled workforce is very essential, because numbers, we've for long we've changed only numbers in terms of people, number of people getting at, and that's it. We're not looking at what is the quality of that people that we have hired. you know and therefore, those kind of people are actually adding a lot of waste in our process. So productivities are low, quality is low, rejection rates are high, costs are high, and these are things which have become much more evident now, when the tsunami has hit us and now receded back, kind of thing. And we can see all the muck, actually. you know and that's exactly where people are very concerned, and I think rightly so. And I think this gives us a lot of confidence at ASDC that we will be able to push forward this agenda of skilling the right kind of people that the industry needs, and people who are used to using automation in the process. Now, whether it is in the domain of manufacturing, whether it is in the domain of sales. We recently did a very large program on digital sales skills, because today a customer doesn't come and walk into a showroom, and all the 3-4 visits back and forth between the customer's home and the showroom, these things don't happen. They've all got replaced by digital interactions, just like the one that we are having right now. So similarly, the sales process is happening through that. And therefore, the existing salesperson also will need to change in that way. And the new person who is coming into the sales system will be able to do that. And same in the service domain, because the vehicles are connected, the data is there of how you are using the vehicle, how you are charging the vehicle, how you are running the vehicle, what services you've done, what have been your history. I mean, you got to know all of that while you are touching the vehicle. Actually, you have all the data available in your fingertips while you are doing it. And today's cars are becoming so complex, you just can't go to the roadside mechanic even for your two-wheelers, because they are also evolved in terms of the control units, etc., that are already there for the BS6 kind of vehicles. and therefore you need people who must be skilled, who must be trained, and otherwise they will become irrelevant.
Very true, sir. I think as with the electric vehicles, like we said, that there are very less moving parts available into the electric vehicles, and even into the two wheelers. Even I talk to the BS6 also. A lot of the architectures or the technology being changed as compared to the BS6, BS4, for example. In electric vehicle also, like the battery, one of the component, which are generally largely the manufacturers having the right to do this, whatever the faults come into that. Like any roadside guy cannot do that,
Hmm.
right? So these are the some of the very different models evolving, and I think this is also going to change once we have the mass adoption of the electric, the mobility in India. I think the servicing domain is also going to change the completely. The way you used to see to today, we have the huge unorganized sector also for the servicing, right?
Hmm.
But it is going to completely change because there are just because of its different the portfolio of the EVs we have, right? So definitely there will be some the professions of that, because there will be some, because there will be less moving parts. We don't have filters, we don't have oils, we don't have much to do with that. So definitely there will be a fall into the requirement of the manpower. But similarly, on the other hand, because it's more smart connected and it is more of a computer or the new technology like telematics oriented where we are talking about. So that domain at least have a new again the opportunity for the people with the right skill set or specialized skill set required to the same domain.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. You're bang on that. In fact, in the short term, what will also happen is that the service mechanic will have to answer to a lot of queries in terms of the usability of the vehicle.
Right.
Because for the user, some of the features will be very new, and they might think that something is not working, where he or she probably would not know how to use it effectively, essentially. So there will be an element of customer service that will be required in terms of technical things within the vehicle. Additionally, the service technician of the future will change dramatically, because they will be armed with laptops and diagnostic tools, and softwares,
Right.
and so that they can connect to the vehicle, do run the diagnostics, understand where the issues are. So you have, let's say, a battery pack of whatever, 30 cells or whatever number, yeah, and there is this one cell which has gone bad. Now you would need to run the diagnostics and be able to understand which is that one which is physically not good. I mean, you can't do a trial and error of taking out those 30 and keeping changing. I mean, that's not going to work. So you got to know the process, in terms of servicing. So yes, you're right that you won't keep changing the oil filter, the air filter, the engine oil, and that kind of a thing. Maybe some form of coolant will still remain. Of course, brake fluids will still remain, but some of these other things will not be there. But uh, but you will have some different kind of challenges, essentially, and those will have to be addressed, as to why some of those problems are coming in the vehicles, essentially.
So, sir, do you think that in India to have a very clear policy focusing on the skill development scenarios for developing the right skill set for the industry, for emerging industry?
Yeah, I think it has evolved a lot. If I look back about 10 years back, when probably the National Skill Development Corporation was set up, and subsequently Automotive Skill Development Council was set up, the landscape that was there in terms of skill training in this country has changed significantly, though we are way short of what we need to do. Uh, I think there are a lot more engagement that the government continues to do. I think there are newer schemes in terms of PMKVY 3, PM under uh, PM Garib Kalyan initiative that is there, and plus other initiatives. It is being taken, percolated through to the states and to the districts, essentially, involvement of the government machinery in terms of being able to do that. And at the same time, I think what we've been constantly advocating for and trying to nudge and prod and push the industry to kind of get deeper into getting your getting into apprenticeships, getting into skills training, which ensures that there is a steady constant flow of good quality skilled manpower that can come into the system. And of course, how the industries can locally connect with certain amount of training institutions or educational institutions, so that uh, they invest some of their expertise into conducting the programs, etc. And that will lead them that they can actually use the manpower that is coming out of those institutions for their own requirements when they need it, actually. So it's a symbiotic relationship that one will need to be able to put through. And I think that's something which we are focusing on, and we're looking at how we can get more and more such collaborations happening. The collaboration with your training program is one initiative, and we definitely foresee that as we progress with subsequent batches, we will see how much more involvement we can get in terms of individual uh, industry organizations to come into this.
I think dedicated the training programs and the industry collaboration is very much required, I think, in this e-mobility scenarios as well. Coming back to, again, the education system we have, the existing education, I have been, in my experience, I personally like visiting the colleges, having several interaction during the, you know, the orientation sessions with the different departments, mechanical, electrical, electronics. So a lot of queries comes from the student point of view, even from the training and placement department or the HODs, because they are also now have tempting the change is happening in the industry. Okay, so they are also really worried about how to go ahead with this change, how to bring this the skill sets and the expertise to their level. So recently, like we have launched our EVPLC model. Okay, so that was the model with the same intention to support engineering institutions to have a dedicated micro lab facilities where at least we can support the students and the faculties to train them onto the latest the technology of the automotive with the project based training. But something similar to that, that we are as a standalone, the institutes or the organization working on the scaling. But when we see at the infrastructure level, the level of the education system we have, every year approx 30 to 35 to 40 lakh enrollment is happening in our Indian engineering domains. If I just talk about the focus domains, which is mechanical, electrical, electronics, and in EV we talk about, I think we have to include the CS and IT as well because of the IoT and everything. So they are also not left apart. So this is going to be a kind of a multidisciplinary approach in electric vehicles. Right? So
Absolutely.
how the faculties basically, because the faculties are the show runners for 4 years, they are going to impart the training education to their candidates. So how do you see that this is basically a real challenge actually, because individual institutes have its own capacity and all that, because when we look at the infrastructure level, like we have a more than 10,000 engineering institutes and universities in India. Okay, so and deployed thousands of the faculties. How we should look ahead from the student point, institute point of view to upgrade them as well, because at the point of time, industry will also going to need the fresher talents coming out of the engineering colleges. At this point of time, we don't have certain as a part of the curriculum of the electric mobility. So this is, I think, is one of the biggest challenge where we should also address to upgrade this faculties with the faculty development program or something similar to that.
Sure. I think that's one of our priority areas in terms of looking at programs, short term as well as slightly longer term programs that we are now debating in terms of doing training of trainers for even the traditional job roles, because quality of trainer, unless that is improved, will not improve the quality of training. The best way to do that is to involve a lot of industry players who are already in the midst of the technology changes that are happening. And therefore I think it's a that's where I was saying that if there is a symbiotic relationship between the educational institute and the nearby the industry organizations, and there is a continuous exchange, which means that the students get to learn from some of the industry experts at times, and during those times, or otherwise, essentially the trainers of the institute actually get to learn from the industry while they are at the industry, and they are actually doing some kind of a OJT. So we recently launched a kind of a master class for our master trainers. So these are not only trainers, but these are essentially master trainers, and we took those master trainers in each batch, about 8 to 10 of them, and actually placed them inside an industry to conduct their refresher training for a 3 to 4 day program, and we intend to do things like that, where a trainer can come back to that industry at least 3 to 4 days to start with, so that they are at least aware of how changes are happening within the industry, what are the new things that the people in the industry are talking about. So they get exposed to all of that, not only theoretically, but also practically, and also kind of get exposed to that kind of environment, because our manufacturing setups are changing significantly with more and more of automations and various connected equipments, etc. That smart manufacturing that we were talking about. So some of these, and including things like service network, etc. So when you are doing a collision repair, the kind of tools and equipments that you use is not what you see sometimes on the roadside. That somebody is taking up a hammer and just beating it against some kind of a shape or whatever it is. I mean, that's not the way to do it. There are automatic pullers and panel aligners, etc., which and then how you do the painting, etc., so that you get a vehicle which is as close to being a new vehicle as possible.
I think, sir, timing's coming to end to the session, and I think the 1 hour is not sufficient to take all the questions regarding, because this is a very long the subject talk about the skilling, the jobs, the industry. I think because recently this career talk, the agenda was to actually for the community, for the AV community, how we can bring the value with doing some, the knowledge sharing programs and episodes where industry people can, the students community, the faculties or the industry people can get benefit, at least the awareness that what is happening to the industry, so that they can at least prepare themselves accordingly. So what we are doing separately, getting into the training development, developing the solution for the academia, how they can adopt this technology at a faster rate, right, with the collaboration and all. I think this initiative is also parallelly required in a kind of a collaboration with all the key stakeholders, right? And that is the only way forward I see personally, because we are at a very nascent stage, and everybody has his own expertise, because none of the person is the complete expertise in that. So I believe that if we can utilize this expertise in the form of the good gesture of the collaboration and bring those value to the platform, and we can parallelly also enhance the ecosystem and the community. So I think that will be also a parallel development can be had, at least level of the awareness. It could be impact the people.
Right. Absolutely. Completely agree with you. And I think there's a great initiative that you've focused on this and looked at creating an Autobot Academy and looking at connecting the educational institutions into connect them to the industry. And we will be more than happy to kind of work together, collaborate, and see what are the additional areas of opportunity where we could look at partnering and collaborating. Your engagement with ACMA itself, I think, has given you enough access to the industry, for instance. And at the same time, college linkages are things that you've already been working on, and I'm sure this will result in a significant impact in the way that skilling is done in this country.
Definitely, sir. We are also positively looking for the same thing and looking for the continuous, the innovation and the support from the industry and the council. So how we can, put that the solutions to the real challenges what we are facing currently. And Autobot Academy now it's completely focused to the education. That will be dedicated platform which will be the creating the solutions to support the industry, the academia, and even the individuals towards adopting the electric vehicle technologies, either for the jobs, either for the entrepreneurship, or either for the self development as well. So it was really, I had few questions left actually, but with the time constraints, I look forward maybe if coming sessions we could have like extension of this program. I would surely look forward to have this question, because these questions actually directly constantly we are coming from the community side, because for the fresher people actually. So these fresher people have a lot of anxieties in them seeing the current scenarios and all, and there are a lot of questions to that. Okay, so I thought to address, but at the time what we have decided is complete. So I look forward, if time permits, we can have the extension of this program in any Friday show, and I would like to have you again to talk about these things. And I think whatever you have shared from the industry point of view is really motivating, and putting a lot of lights to their areas, because I talk about electric mobility, there are a lot of people's definitely they don't have idea also, like they are completely unaware of that what is happening. Even I've seen the people who are in industry also. So every day I think our team is mentoring and the consulting up to 15 to 20 people, the calls coming to us directly. So I think we see that at a global level, that we have around 35 million people employed in this, our direct and indirect, in our automotive industry. So it's a quite big figure. So I think we need a bigger platforms where we can address these issues, and it only happens with the collaboration.
Yeah, absolutely. It will be my pleasure to come back and join you again. Thank you very much, and
Thank you.
look forward. Look forward.
Thank you
Thank
so much,
you.
sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.